listening to Real Coaching Radio TV, building a positive network.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org. Are you in the entertainment industry? If you answered yes and you want to promote yourself, your passion, and profession, check out Creative Independent Artists magazines at CIAartists.com. Endorsed by Kids Talk Foundation worldwide.
Welcome to Unopened Gifts, the weekly one-hour program dedicated to understanding the human potential that lies within us and the abundant life that lies before us. Inspired by the personal journey of our host, James McPartland.
Well, and I'll tell you, they don't come much more inspired by me, or than me, due to my special guest, what I will call Diamond Jim Roddy, is with us today. And for those of you who are joining the program for the first time, or perhaps you're coming back to see us again, thank you for joining us today. This is a gift to have both Jim and all of you viewing the program today. For those of you who know the program, about the program, or want to learn more, the intention of this program, Unopened Gifts, is to provide you a gift for virtue of listening to the story of the folks that come on the program. And this story today will be completely inspiring and probably very timely for this time of the year, which is a time of gratitude and looking into the future for next year. Jim Roddy joins us from the great city of Erie, Pennsylvania. I know he'd rather be at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, but we'll get to that in a few moments. Jim is the president of Jameson Publishing. He's also a man who has a great story that is articulated well in a book. This gentleman has overcome cancer, and if I'm not mistaken, had recently has his 10-year anniversary with a sparkling clean report. And I often say to people that gifts come in the most unusual formats, shapes, size, colors. And sometimes it's the things that we don't expect, or often the setbacks that can serve us in a transformative way. Jim, I think, can illustrate that in amazing ways. A man who's overcome cancer, has completely transformed the business, met the woman of his dreams, has become a great father, and a number of things. But we'll let Jim get to that. Jim, welcome to the program.
Jim, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. And, as you and I had a chance to chat a little bit, and I talked to you about the hallmark of what this program is all about, we went right into the game of I'm working on a book. It's soon to be released. My book is Unopened Gifts, and that story being one of somebody who's not recognized all they had until they almost lost it all. And while that was cataclysmic to me in my own way, when you were, if I'm not mistaken, in your early 30s, diagnosed with cancer, and I can't imagine what that sounds like when someone gives you the message in what happens in one's life, but you were involved in a business, growing a business, looking at hiring practices associated with the business. That was transformative in a number of ways. Could you talk to us a little bit about that story?
Sure. Happy to do that. So 10 years ago, just a little over 10 years ago now, I was 32 years old and was working as an operations manager here at the company I'm currently with, Jameson Publishing. So I was only a few years into the job. I had been self-employed before that and was happy to connect with an employer that was growing and had some really good people on staff. And I had moved from coming on board as managing editor to operations manager. And so the way that I got the operations manager job was just simply I started having some success hiring people on the operations side of the business. So they asked me to hire some salespeople, and when salespeople said, "Why am I talking to an editor?" they said, "Well, we should probably give you a different title." And so I ended up with operations manager. And so things were going well, but I had some digestive problems, and long story short, got them checked out and then found out that I had colon cancer. And so I was 32 years old, and I realized for the next year I was going to be out for most of the year, 6 weeks solid with surgery, and then off and on due to chemotherapy treatments. And so it really struck me, I don't know if it was right at that moment, but it was more during that time when, wait, I'm not going to be in the business every single day to get done what I think needs to be done or the way that I want it done. And so that really struck me as It's the people who you hire who are going to make sure your business is running well. You can't be in every pocket of your business, whether it's by choice or whether it's by, mine wasn't a choice of my own. And so I really learned lessons that it's true that the people who you hire really make or break your business. I had said those words before, I had thought it, but I don't think I ever really understood it until I went through that. So once I went through that experience, it really helped crystallize that that's what you need to do. And so the lessons that I learned when cancer knocked me down, I make sure I apply those lessons aggressively every time I'm interviewing a potential employee.
So Jim, I tell you, the word must be out, not only in Erie, here in California, but perhaps around the planet. We've been joined by Stick'em and Blog TV. That brings several thousand guests onto the broadcast, who we have a now responsibility to make sure that they get some real jewels from you, which I think they'll absolutely happen. And for those of you just joining, Jim Roddy's with us from Erie, Pennsylvania. Jim is a 10-year anniversary survivor of colon cancer, something that transformed his life both professionally, no question, personally, and I think had a sort of a squiggly line correlation to the woman that ultimately became his wife. And Jim, if you would touch on that aspect of the story.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So we had an open position at our company for copy editor, and we had been searching for months and couldn't find somebody who had the right skills and personality for it. So it involved somebody who could communicate well with editors and be a good teacher for them, but also somebody who could really tolerate doing research on their own and really getting into details. And so you find people who do one or the other, or like to do one or the other. It was hard to find somebody who could do both. And the owner of the company and I had even talked about, well, maybe we should reorganize the department and not even look for this position since we can't fill it. And so we talked about it, but there was a candidate who came into our process, and her name was Barbara. She was moving back to Erie after working at the patent office in Washington, D.C. And so we did the interviews with her, the testing, had her meet some of our staff, and boy, she had all the qualities that we were looking for to fill that position. It just so happened that Barb's mother worked for a gastrointestinal surgical unit, and so she worked with a lot of GI doctors. And so when I started having my GI issues, I didn't know what to do. I knew about sports, I knew about publishing, but I didn't know anything about medical. And so I was just asking her questions. She checked with her mom, and so she helped guide me and get me in touch with the right tests and the best doctors, which is something that I really recommend to anybody who goes through cancer. You want to rush out and do the first thing, but make sure you get the best, even if that means talking to a few different people. And so Barb's mom actually performed my colonoscopy, and she was the one who confirmed that the mass that was in my colon was cancerous. And so over the next several months or so, since Barb and I got closer in talking about this, we became closer, and then spent some time outside of work and fell in love. And now Barb and I are married, and we have a 7-year-old. I had tried to get attractive women to pay attention to me, and I guess I had to go and get cancer in order to get the woman to pay attention to me. So I know everybody who goes through cancer, it's different scenarios. For some folks, I was very fortunate that my cancer was treatable. For some folks, it isn't. But for those folks who it is treatable, it is a life-changing experience, and there can be blessings to that cloud. And that's really something that I experienced firsthand, not just with the 100 lessons in the book, like I said, personally with meeting Barb, and that's more important than 10,000 hiring lessons put together.
Well, you said all the right things this holiday season, particularly if Barb is tuned in. But it's an interesting story, and I have to ask you, Jim, and we're going to get peppered with a lot of questions, so we'll probably have to do some speed Q&A here before too long. But one of the things that had been on my mind since we chatted was what one must get to think about or learn about themselves when one goes through what you've gone through. You talk about how it crystallized for you the importance of hiring and what you look for in people and how you protect those people. And I have to believe it's somewhat also of a mirror reflection of how we look at ourselves and how we treat ourselves. What did you learn about yourself, from the diagnosis and since then that maybe you wouldn't have had you not been diagnosed?
Sure. One thing that when I went into the whole medical experience, there were so many things I didn't know. I couldn't presume I knew anything about surgery or I knew anything about chemotherapy. So I really had to get into a deep questioning and understanding mode and being skeptical, where just because somebody has a degree and they tell you something doesn't mean that it's the gospel truth. You found out from talking to multiple doctors that people had varying opinions. And so that crystallized for me. A lot of times you go into the hiring process, you look at somebody's resume and you go, oh, I think I can make a judgment whether this person is good or not. But you really have to walk in with an open mind. And then when you get data from them, you have to be skeptical and try to get more data points to say, does this really line up? And I remember one person we interviewed and we actually ended up hiring. The first time I looked at her resume, she had written for a community newspaper. And so I thought, hey, what's somebody from a community newspaper going to teach us? We're a national, magazine publisher. And boy, did she have great stories about, really understanding their audience and scrambling to reach it and making deadlines, all the things that we did in our job. It just so happened she worked for, a country newspaper that was covering when a pig truck overturned on Route 6N, and we were just, going to have her cover technology, obviously different things. But what was in her and the way she approached it was what we were looking for. So it was really the dig until you get an answer. And so when people go through and they're hiring somebody, they might not see it as important. They might feel they have something more important to do that afternoon. But it's really building the future of your business. You're not just hiring, or shouldn't be just hiring somebody to fill a seat. You should be looking for somebody who doesn't just have skills and a decent personality. They've also got to have character in order to build the kind of culture that you want in your organization, and that they're going to be loyal to you and really enjoy that job, have the capabilities and the initiative to do the next job. You can build a company along with that person. And so I was put in I'd say life or death situation, but boy, did those answers or those questions really become serious, and the answers I got very serious. And it also taught me I could be brave. So one of the questions that I asked the surgeon who actually performed my surgery, I had to ask him because I needed to know, on your surgical table, how many of your patients have died? I mean, it's a question that I wanted to know. I didn't want to go in there and find out as they're wheeling me in, boy, this guy's got a 50% mortality rate. Like, oh my goodness. And so he explained to me the situation behind it, and he was happy to answer the question. So it taught me, it really made me braver to ask questions and realize that if you ask them and explain to people why you're asking that question, you can ask, almost anything that is legal and anything pertinent to the situation. So it gave me a lot of courage to ask hard questions because I really needed that data.
So Jim, let me ask you, as you learn this about the hiring process and about people, I suspect that the attributes within the business world are the same in the world at large, or put another way is, it probably has influence on how one chooses their influenced by their peer group and the people that they spend time with or associated with. But at the same token, I think that there's an unintended outcome in many business environments, and it's the same whether a person's within the business or outside, is frustration can develop, the business maybe is not performing, and we can tend to look for faults in people or blame as opposed to what this person can contribute and how to water the part of the plant that's growing. And you talk a little bit about maybe that aspect of seeing the good and building on that, whether it's in business or outside of business?
Sure. There's seeing the good and what initiative people take in order to make something better. And there's also in not just interviewing for success stories, but dealing with people's failings. And there are a lot of times when we talk to people in an interview process about how they accept criticism or when they talk about when they failed at something. And sometimes people say, one specific question is, tell me about the last time you missed a deadline, or what kind of deadlines do you struggle with? You get people who are like, nothing, never, no, not me, didn't do it. You're thinking, come on, if you've been on the planet for any amount of time, you missed a deadline, whether it was intentionally or circumstances just caused you to miss it. And so you find out, how do people react under stress? How do they react when things aren't going well? I played Division II basketball at Gainey University, and my coach was Bob Duquette. He also coached at Marquette and St. Peter's University in New Jersey. And he would always say, point the thumb, not the finger. And so my wife always does this, where she'll point the thumb at me. And so he really taught, and that's what we look for in a situation. When things get difficult, are people pointing the thumb, or are they pointing the finger at other people? Are they a victim of their circumstances, or do they say, that was difficult, either I made the mistake or the situation is what it is, and let's act constructively. Another thing that Coach Duquette always taught us is to act like a surgeon. And so during basketball games, there can be all sorts of pressure and you can flip out. But he would say, when a surgeon opens you up and something goes wrong, how do you want your surgeon to react? Do you want them to throw the scalpel up in the air and go, oh my gosh, this is terrible? Or do you want them to go, oh, here's a problem, here's what we need to do. Oh, there's another problem, here's what we need to do. And just move on through that. And so if you ask deep probing interview questions about successes, about failures, about, like you talked about the world in general, about interpersonal relationships, and do folks cower from those, or do they have courage to have the hard conversation? Those are things that we look for in a candidate, and it's just a person that you want to bump into every day. I know I like working with our group here at Jamison Publishing because they do take individual responsibility. When they make a mistake, they're very quick to say, for individuals, here's where I fell short, or if you give them criticism, they try to understand and say, I'll try to work on that. That's the kind of environment you need if you want to move forward. You can't have people just sweeping mistakes under the rug.
So you keep that thumb pretty busy there, yeah?
Yeah, yes, very much.
Well, hey, listen, can I bomb you with a few questions?
Yeah, go right ahead, Jim.
And I don't mean bomb you, that would come across the wrong way. But I can inspire you with a few questions because you've certainly prompted many. And if I could throw an F-bomb at you, allow me to. The question centers around fear. And the question comes from our good friend Antonio, who wants to know how you did or how you do manage fear on a day-to-day basis, one of what you've been through and how you dealt with that, but also the fear of perhaps something coming back, or just dealing with fear in general in the game of life.
That's a great question, because a side effect to going through this, and also my father passed away of a heart attack when he was 52, and up until that point, I thought I was indestructible. I would play whatever, I'd run whatever, and I just push myself, and you think, I'm going to be fine, it's going to be somebody else. And like I said, my father passed away of a heart attack at a fairly young age, and that caused me and still causes me fear. And then when you do get that diagnosis, where I've always had boring doctor appointments, and suddenly I get one where the doctor says to me, hey, you have cancer, you might have cancer, and then I got the call from Barb's mom that confirmed that it was. So I do live with that fear. I have to admit that's an area that I can do better at. Whenever I go in for my checkups, I do get regular checkups to make sure that things are under control. My blood pressure is always up because I'm always worried about it. And when you get a pain, I just had some abdominal pain, some strains there. Well, you know what I was thinking? Oh my gosh, is it back? I mean, I just had blood work a month prior, but it's hard to overcome that. And I have a coworker who 3 years ago went through something very similar to this, and he comes to me with his same fears, and I tell him, oh, look at the percentages. But it is difficult to deal with, and the advice I got from my doctor is look for horses, not for zebras. So you can see horses all over the place, but don't leap to, oh my gosh, it's a zebra. And all you can do is act constructively. And so I do struggle with that. And so I just make sure I get medical checkups, and the only downside to going to the doctor too soon, if you have fear, is them saying, hey, look, it's really nothing and you wasted an hour of my time. But if you wait too long, the consequences can be dire. So I do go to the doctor. I do rely on my wife, and to give me advice, because she's logical and better in terms of research. And I also stay away